Okay, well, welcome everybody. I don't know who is watching at the moment because I'm actually live streaming this, which just makes things a little bit easier. But this is particularly for the growth group leaders this term, 2026, looking at the Jacob cycle, which is Genesis 25 all the way through to 36 for term 1. So I don't expect anyone to be watching right at this moment, but if you are, you may as well say g'day, because I can say g'day, excuse me, right back to you. Okay, let's jump into it. Let's have a think. We're going to be thinking about, as I said, the Genesis a series this term, and it's Genesis 25 to 36. And I want to talk about things that are our favourite things. And I haven't done this for a little while, so I'm just trying to get my head back into it. Remember, we've talked about our favourite things being Bible, understanding the Bible, prayer, community and mission. And I suppose I want to ask, where do growth groups fit in? And you can see how they fit into 1 and 3. Out to 1 and 3. Bible, obviously, prayer, we're praying with one another, and even community as well, where this actually community might be the most critical one for our particular situation. But 4, let me think about mission. How is mission a part of your growth group? I wonder what your group's experience of mission is. We have groups that give to mission. They save a little bit of money, put it in the bucket, and it goes off to mission, that sort of thing. That's great. We've had some unchurched people, not necessarily unbelievers, but unchurched, come to our groups before coming to church, and that's absolutely 100% fine. Positive experience for those people, and we pray many of them will make that jump to church. But I want to encourage invitation, even to people at church who you find out aren't in a growth group. Why don't you invite them to your group? We have groups that get together to explore the Bible. That's the sort of thing you can say. Hey, we have these groups that explore the Bible, and you're most welcome to come and join us if you're interested. Now, I want to say this because this term we are... Oh, I've done that one. Sorry, I'll get there. I'll get the flow of this in a minute. Where does mission fit in? There's your group's experience, often a first positive step. And we have be able to say to someone, we have a group that explores the Bible, and if you're interested, come and check it out. But this next 7 weeks, we are looking at, we're looking at a bunch of stuff. And one of the important things that is happening this term is we're having an SMBC mission. Now, SMBC stands for Sydney Missionary and Bible College, and they have a team that are planning to come up here in around March 22nd to 29, and they will be involved with our growth groups. The bits and pieces and details we're not totally up with at the moment, but we will be very soon. So keep that in mind. Missions coming up. In the 7 weeks before that mission, we will be looking at Genesis chapters 25 through 36, and then we'll have Easter, then there'll be that mission week. And so keep those things in mind. Talk to your group about some ideas for the mission week as well. It's things that your group could do in particular, or group things that your group could put together and do with other groups, that sort of thing. Okay, there's that. Just want to talk about the shape of the studies this term. I was feeling we were getting a little too processed with the studies, and I wanted to, in a context of a growth group where there's limited time, make sure there is maximum engagement with the text of the Bible, and with varying confidence in leaders to open up for discussion. I was just really trying to work at what these studies can look like best. So I'm really open to edits and ideas, and also open to any disagreements and different things that you think we could do. So that's just wanted to flag that the growth group studies this term will be a little different to what we normally have, but open to some suggestions there. But this big picture of Genesis that we're looking at the moment, so Genesis has really 10, maybe 11 parts to it. It has 10 what's called Toledoths, which these are the generations of. That's what that stands for. And you'll see as you're reading through Genesis this phrase repeated. It's repeated 10 times, and it breaks Genesis up into various sections. I'd want to say, though, that broadly there are 4 major sections in Genesis. Genesis 1 to 11, which we covered in 2024. That's Adam and Eve, Garden of Eden, right through to Tower of Babel. Then there is the next section, which is Genesis 12 through 24, and that's called the Abraham cycle, and we looked at that last year. This year we're doing chapters 25 to 35, or 36, 35, 36, and that's called the Jacob cycle, and that's what we'll be looking at over this next 7 weeks or so. So this Jacob cycle breaks into 4 parts, into 4 sections, and the first section is chapters 25, 19 to 28, 9, and this is Jacob at home, and this is with the stories of his birth and Esau's birth and Abimelech and Jacob fleeing and the whole the red stew and deceiving Isaac and things like that. So that's that first section. What happens after the deception of Esau is Jacob flees home because he's worried that his brother's going to kill him. Sounds a little bit like Cain and Abel, doesn't it? But anyway, the second section is Jacob on the road, and that's chapters 28, verse 10, through to chapter 32, verse 2. And this is where we meet things like that stairway to heaven, where we see Jacob heading towards Laban, his uncle, and finding a wife. He actually finds 2 wives. We'll get to that when we get to that. And then Jacob flees. And there's this little thing about speckled cattle and speckled sheep, speckled goats, and that will be coming up as well soon. We then have a family reunion, which is our third section. And this is a nervous reunion at the beginning where Esau and Jacob are about to meet face to face. Jacob's pretty stressed out at this because of what he did to his brother, and we find that they actually have a very good reunion and things go okay. The final section, in the 4th section of this Jacob cycle, is Jacob heading back to Bethel. Bethel's a significant part in this section. And then we have the offspring of Jacob, which is the 12 tribes. And we have the offspring of Esau, a whole lot of his wives, more than 12 wives, whatever it is there, I can't remember, but you can have a look at that. So a lot of themes that recur in this. I'm just going to jump off there because I'm in the way. I'll come back actually when I get to that. The themes that are flowing through this section and through the rest of Genesis are barrenness, that is, a life out of death. So we find Eve is sort of kicks it off, where there is the implications or the consequences of sin is that she will have trouble with children, giving birth, conceiving and giving birth. And then we see this played out in the life of Israel and as it follows. So Sarah has trouble because she's so old. Rebecca is not old, but is still barren, and that's Isaac's wife. And then we find even Jacob's wife has trouble conceiving. Now, this is a clear theme where God is bringing life out of death. Later on in the Bible, we have the same sort of thing with Hannah, who is Samuel's mum, and that's in 1 Samuel. You can see that. We also have a similar sort of vibe with Elizabeth, don't we? Elizabeth in Luke chapter 1, where she gives birth to John the Baptist, and in some sense as well, Mary. So there is this theme, although she is a virgin and not seen to be, I can't conceive, there is still this sense of a miraculous birth there. The other theme that comes through is sibling rivalry. And sibling rivalry has begun right from beginning of the beginning, which is Genesis. Cain and Abel, think of there as sibling rivalry there, particularly on the behalf of Cain. Think of Isaac and Ishmael, there's sibling rivalry there. Jacob and Esau, Joseph and the brothers. And then later, and I'd want to say that Genesis is written not in the time that it was set, but 1,000 years after it was set, actually set in the Bronze Age, but written in the Iron Age, and so around the time of the monarchy. And so around that time we actually have the whole of Israel in a state of sibling rivalry as well, or coming out of it at least, where the 10 northern tribes and the 2 southern tribes are not getting on that well, and that's the whole story there. The other theme that goes through is God's promise despite human failure, and what we saw of that is in Abraham, we then see in Isaac, and we see in Jacob as well. There is this sense of needing to, of having the promise, but somehow having to work it out themselves. So, when Abraham, so I'm doing all this by memory, so when Abraham is given the promise to by God, and then he says going to have a child, he says, I'm going to have a child, Sarah's way too old, can't conceive, I'm too old, I'm as good as dead. He tries to make it happen himself, and what we see is this theme go all the way through, and it's the characters learning that the promise is dependent not on them but on God. And so there's always that sense of when there's barrenness, you can't fix it, God fix it, brings the promise to that, makes those promises a reality. And even you can see there is a repeating of the whole my wife is my sister thing that Abraham does out of fear that if he doesn't do that, then the promise that God has given to him won't come to fruition. Well, Jacob does exactly the same thing, and has Isaac does exactly the same thing, and there's these reminders of that. And I want to jump off there. The rise of Judah. This is a significant one. One of the things that Genesis seems to do is really, by the end of your reading of it, you think, well, what's the deal with Judah? Why is Judah at the end of this highly promoted? And Judah gets to be the one that kings come from. The scepter will never leave from Judah. So I want to say there is clearly an agenda by the writers in the monarchic period to promote Judah as a legitimate tribe from where kingship can come, because even though they're not the firstborn, they are the fourthborn for Jacob, that still they can rise to the top. And so there's, in some sense, you can see that it would be a political thing at the time, promoting Judah as a legitimate way, pouring your efforts and your support behind the local king who's from the tribe of Judah, that sort of thing. There are also some name changes in Genesis, and remember, Abram's name is changed to Abraham, a significant moment. Well, that will happen also in this Jacob cycle. Jacob's name will be changed to Israel, and Jacob's goes from, his name means striving or reaching or grasping, that sort of thing, to his name being Israel, which is in a sense sort of wrestling with God, that sort of thing. So there's those ones. Pop back on the screen so it's a little bit easier to think about. Our section that we're going to be looking at, we're beginning to end. There is Jacob He's grasping and deceptive at the beginning. In the end, he's limping and dependent. That's a really important thing to see. It's a story of slow transformation. So leaders, really, as we're going through this, need you to keep the text central. And although some of these texts are quite long, then we still want to hang in there, work at it. A lot of it is repetitive, but the repetition is part of the message. So don't just go, oh, it's repeating the same thing over again. Ask, why is it repeating the same thing over and over again? And so pray that with mission in mind. Now, one of the things I do want to do is just talk about different parts. I might go back here. Did I go there? No. Okay, so I'm going to jump off there and I'm going to jump up here. So the different sections of Genesis that we'll be looking at is Genesis 25 verses 19 to 34. That's this week, that's tomorrow. And that's when Isaac and Rebekah have twin sons, Esau and Jacob, and their struggle begins in the womb, with God declaring that the older will serve the younger, which is a reversal, an inversion of the normal expectation. Esau becomes a hunter, Jacob becomes a quiet guy. There's this parental favoritism that divides the household. Isaac loves Esau, and Rebekah loves Jacob. And so there is this going on as well. Esau despises his birthright and sells it to Jacob just for a meal, revealing his disregard for the covenant and this privilege of that sets this theme for reversal. So first section, God chooses the younger of the older, exposing our human desire and disregard for God's promises. The second part is Genesis 26, and this is during a famine. And here Isaac goes out, takes his family among the Philistines, and he does the same thing that Abraham did, a bit of deception about his wife. Abimelech works this out, gets upset, then ends up giving Isaac a whole bunch of stuff, and he has great prosperity. But the prosperity is so much that Abimelech's workers and people, they start to despise Isaac and his wealth. And so God reaffirms in this section that I keep getting messages. I better just check. There we go. He despises. Sorry, I've got to be not distracted by my watch. The chapters end with Esau marrying Hittite women, and this causes great grief to both Isaac and Rebekah. So this section is God remaining faithful to his promise despite human fear and failure. The next section is chapters 27 through 28, and here Jacob, aided by Rebekah, mum, deceives blind Isaac, and this is the whole thing about getting Esau's blessing from him, this blessing of the firstborn. He's already got the birthright, and now we see this played out in Isaac being deceived. And remember, this is what Jacob's name means, deceiver, grabber, heel grabber, trying to get past things. Isaac then ends up blessing Jacob, and Esau turns up and says, "No, what have you done?" You'd think that Isaac could just say, "Oh, well, I take it back, you fooled me," but that's not how it works in this period. Your words go out, you can't take them back. And so there is this idea of a blessing given to Jacob. He's a trickster, he's tricked it out of his dad. Part 2 is this journey of Jacob away from home because of what he's done. He has tricked his dad and his brother, and so his brother wants to kill him, and so he flees, and fair enough, and his mum tells him to go and see Uncle Laban, and while he's there with Uncle Laban, he meets his wife-to-be, but Laban tricks him and ends up putting his firstborn, Leah, not Princess Leia, but Laban's Leah, and she then becomes Jacob's wife. And then Jacob says, "Yeah, but I love Rachel. I'll work for 7 more years." And then he gets Rachel as well. The next section is we've talked about that, and his wealth grows and all that sort of thing. Next section is when Jacob is coming back from Laban, and he wrestles to face Esau, and while he's waiting, he wrestles with God and is at that point renamed Israel. And what we were saying before, where did we say that? We were saying that he moves from being grasping and deceptive to being limping and dependent. And this is a significant move, and he goes from being called Jacob to being called Israel. He is reconciled with Esau. Jacob is reconciled with Esau. He was sort of expecting a bit of argy-bargy, bit of biffo, but doesn't get either of that. There is this section then where Dinah, the only recorded female child of Jacob, is violated, raped, and her brothers Simeon and Levi they hatch a plot, and they end up massacring a whole bunch of people. It's pretty horrible, and that sort of goes on and to rescue the reputation of Dinah, their sister. The final section is where God calls Jacob back to Bethel, and where he renews the covenant and purifies his household. Rachel dies giving birth to Benjamin, and this is very sad, but there's another child born of the favourite wife, and so she has had two children there, and Isaac later dies as well. The section concludes with the genealogy of Esau, showing his line becoming established and outside the covenant, while Jacob remains the bearer of God's promise. So I suppose what I want to say is what we need to get the big picture is we need to see Jacob from the beginning to the end of the Jacob cycle. And what we see him in the beginning is called Jacob, deceiver or trickster. And at the end he's called Israel. And this is where he is limping and dependent. So this is the way we've shifted, moving towards recognizing our inability and our dependency on God and his promise. And you can see how this is the same theme that goes on all the way through. Well, there we go. I'm sorry I didn't have more slides for you. We just couldn't meet. There was just too many things happening, but I've put this together so that at least you can get a bit of a vibe of what's happening, and I hope it's been helpful in some way. And although it's been a little bit technically challenged because I haven't done this for quite a while and I was just making sure bits were happening, we got there anyway. So I want to tell you that we'll be praying for your group and really hoping that you will be understanding the Bible, that you will be praying together, you'll be genuinely having community, and this particular term expressing or exploring what it is to have mission in your growth group, particularly helped by our Sydney Missionary Bible College mission. So I want to say thank you for that. I'm going to go like this and say see you later.